This AM Agenda with Kieran Gilbert.
Good morning and welcome to the program. The Abbott government is trying to move the political debate back onto its own turf amid a tough period which has seen worsening polls and open division within the party over same-sex marriage. The Prime Minister has laid down the law to his cabinet ministers over ongoing leaks and disunity. Tony Abbott told a broader coalition party room meeting that all MPs needed to be more disciplined from the cabinet down. With me this morning to discuss this and the other issues of the day, our regulars, the Assistant Treasurer Josh Frydenberg and the Shadow Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasurer, Ed Husic. Gentlemen, good morning to you both. Josh, I'm picking up from some of your colleagues that the Prime Minister's reading the Riot Act to them, but at the same time they're wondering, well, what is the script? What should you be arguing? There doesn't seem a lot of detail on that front.
Well, there was a very passionate debate in the party room, as we know, on the issue of same-sex marriage last week. There were differing views as to whether the next step should be a plebiscite or a referendum. That did play out in public, but that issue is now behind us. Yesterday in the Parliament, we certainly got the better of the opposition because we were talking about jobs and growth and they were pursuing their political vendetta against Justice Hayden. And you'll hear a lot more about that going forward from us because we've got an important game-changing free trade agreement with China that needs to be confirmed by the Parliament, which will create tens of thousands of jobs, and together with the free trade agreements with Korea and Japan.
Is that enough, though? A free trade agreement's enough? You know, the Prime Minister says stick to the script.
It's not enough.
You need a bigger reform plan, don't you?
Absolutely.
So what is it?
Well, we will have more to say about tax reform, more to say about industrial relations reform. We've got the recommendations coming out of both the Harper Competition Policy Review as well as the David Murray Review. But let's not understate how important these free trade agreements are, and let's not overlook Labor's xenophobic campaign, which has been made a mockery of yesterday in the Parliament by Peter Dutton, when the unions themselves are the biggest users of the 457s.
Before we bring Ed into the discussion, the Prime Minister's calling for discipline from his cabinet and others. Again, I put to you that this issue, for example, same-sex marriage, wasn't put to cabinet. So how can he, on the one hand, overlook his cabinet colleagues and then on the next, just days later say, we need you to bind in here, when he didn't even put it to them in the first place?
Well, he hasn't overlooked his cabinet colleagues. This was an issue that was discussed by nearly everybody in the party room with their own passionate views put, and there were differing views because of religious or moral positions.
The cabinet didn't discuss it first.
Well, they discussed it this week when they were discussing the next steps.
Belatedly.
But it was completely appropriate to have that very open and frank discussion in the party room.
All right. Ed Husic, your thoughts on this? I guess the Prime Minister regrouping here and looking at this issue, environmental laws. I'll get to that in a moment, but specifically Labor's view on all of this, I guess, at the moment. You're just trying to keep the focus on Dyson Hayden right now.
Never disappoints on AM Agenda. You just channeled the armless knight out of Monty Python when you said, we had one up on the opposition yesterday, didn't we do well? Come back and fight. Are you kidding me? This Question Time has become the forum where the Prime Minister defends the indefensible. He has no other agenda to be able to prosecute on the floor of the Parliament. They make up distractions like they did with the whole debate about extreme green groups stopping jobs and the type of scare campaign gone on there, and with the free trade agreement that they've said that they were going to go out there and put money into an advertising campaign to get the facts out when they should have been doing this much earlier. All the problems that are being experienced now by this government are own goals. These are as a result of poor decision making being made at the top of the government through Tony Abbott, and they really do need to clean up the way that they're performing, and they can start
on the Royal Commission issue. Though there are serious, you would concede there have been serious outcomes from this, and if you're talking about distractions, this is a very large distraction in itself. It's the king of distractions right now, isn't it? That you don't want the focus on the outcomes of this commission, so you're focusing on this guy's, the Royal Commissioner's, misjudgment in terms of that Liberal Party event.
Okay, if there's stuff that needs to be dealt with, and there have been issues that have been put within that commission that warrant further scrutiny, then absolutely. We do not condone for 1 minute criminal conduct occurring at all, and it needs to be dealt with. The issue is, though, this has not been a commission that has been serious with intent or purpose by the government. This has been a Trojan horse to introduce Work Choices 2.0, to create this claim that they need to now go in and make all this industrial relations form. We're told that there's more industrial relations form by Josh a few moments ago, not given any detail, as we were about tax reform, no detail. So let's see what that brings up. If there's serious stuff to be dealt with, deal with it. But do it in a way too that doesn't subject yourself to further criticism within an already controversial commission. And frankly, Dyson Heydon has put himself in a position where people are asking questions where they shouldn't be asking questions of a person.
So you would like to see, before we go back to the Minister, you would like to see the Commissioner replaced with another jurist and this finished so that people who should be held accountable are?
So deal with it. Royal Commissions are very serious mechanisms. They should not have any doubt about motive, intent, whatever. Dyson Heydon should have done the right thing and excused himself. The government should have done the right thing in the absence of that decision and replaced the Commissioner. And now we have to have the situation where in the Senate we're calling for the Governor-General to intervene because the government and Dyson Heydon have not done the thing that they should have done.
Well, can I just say, the Labor Party has been seeking to undermine the credibility of both the Commissioner and the Commission from day one. And as has been recorded, serious allegations of bribery, blackmail, corruption, secret donations, secret deals that shortchange workers have all been unveiled by this important Royal Commission. Now, Dyson Heydon is someone of the utmost integrity. He's a distinguished jurist. In fact, Bob Carr's Labor Party in New South Wales appointed Dyson Heydon to the New South Wales Court of Appeal. The Howard government appointed him to the High Court. So if he was good enough for the Labor Party in New South Wales to appoint to the New South Wales Court of Appeal, he's good enough to head up a Royal Commission.
This is about a specific
So let me go to that point. Now, what he's saying...
perception of bias.
Okay.
Not even beyond the accusation of bias, as some have made it from Labor and unions, the perception of bias, surely, given the gravity of what you're talking about and the outcomes, you don't want the distraction of a perception of bias.
So let's examine that point that you make. Dyson Heydon, a distinguished and eminent jurist, has said that he overlooked the fact that it was going to be this nature of a Liberal event. Is the Labor Party saying, and Ed, you tell me yes or no, is the Labor Party then saying that he's lying? Is the Labor Party saying he's lying about the fact that he overlooked it? If they're not saying he's lying...
But he's not just saying he overlooked it with respect. A year earlier, he said he recognised this was a Liberal function, and subsequently he must have thought that the thing was going to be over by the time this commitment was on. But he initially had recognised this was a Liberal function.
But if you look at the correspondence, it makes it clear that it was not a fundraiser. There wasn't going to be any Liberal badging of his speech. It was the Sir Garfield Barwick lecture. It's one being given by eminent jurists and Attorney Generals in the past. It was about one legal icon speaking about another.
But he's a Royal Commissioner, right at that moment, into a very, very
good job,
politically charged area.
Sure.
To accept it from...
He said that he overlooked it.
Hang on a second. Can I just pick up on that point? Are you seriously saying that a guy who's heading up a Royal Commission, who's having to bring down very specific findings...
that you don't like?
That will be used, no doubt, as motive for the government to take further legislative reform, that you think it's okay that he overlooked detail? Is it okay to forgive overlooking detail for a person that's in a position where...
So what are you now challenging his competence?
No, well, I'm sort of saying that you can't defend him on the basis of overlooking detail when the man's job is going to involve looking closely at detail. When you're on the branch, don't keep soaring. That is my point.
I guess the problem is here when it comes to previous judgments and so on, where he himself has referred to the perception of bias being enough to discount involvement. This surely, in some eyes, will be a perception of bias when he recognised it was a Liberal function back in 2014 when he was first invited.
Bias in the eyes of the Labor Party.
No, it's not.
And it has been from day one.
It's not. Come on, Josh. In the public space, are you seriously thinking that you can defend a position where you think it's us? And I accept, right? I'm prepared to accept that we look at it and go, well, how can you have a guy where we've already got concerns this is a controversial commission, and we've already had concerns that this is being used by the Abbott government to chase the Labor Party and the union movement, and then he agrees to go to a Liberal Party function, and you don't think in the broader public space people don't believe that this is some issue of perceived bias. I mean, that's just that.
I think he's given his explanation. We get on.
You don't think he's got to go?
No, I don't.
Let's look at the issue of...
Defend. It worked well with Bronwyn Bishop, by the way.
Let's look at the issue of the internal issues of your party. I'd say problems.
The upcoming Canning by-election, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's some real problems in the party, though, in terms of marginal seat holders complaining openly in the party room now to the fact that others aren't sticking to the broader script. How much angst is there among those in marginal seats? You don't have to worry about it in Kooyong, of course, in Melbourne.
Well, no one has
very safe seat.
No one has a safe seat.
But what about the likes of the marginal seat holder that spoke in the party room yesterday and others who are obviously very nervous about where things are heading?
Look, I understand my colleagues and I would rather be ahead in the polls as opposed to behind them. But as I've said repeatedly, we have been behind in the polls under previous leaders, namely John Howard in 2001, 2004, further behind, and came back and won those elections. Now, there have been a lot of issues, be they the entitlements issues, be they the Dyson Heydon issue, be they the same-sex marriage issue, which has not enabled us to talk about the key issues for us, which are about growth and jobs. Now, there was a very significant announcement last week about our targets for climate change.
Completely overwhelmed by the other stories.
Targets that we take to Paris, but it won't go away.
So what's the problem, though? Tell me, is the problem the discipline in the ministry, or is the problem the Prime Minister's judgment? Which is it? Well,
certainly neither. The problem is that these other issues have subsumed the public debate, and that has prevented us from prosecuting our main agenda.
It must be frustrating.
Which is jobs and growth. I'm sure it's frustrating for me. It's frustrating for my colleagues.
But surely, so it's not the ministry's discipline. It's not the Prime Minister's judgment. It's just bad luck.
No, it's these other issues have entered the public arena, stayed around for a long time.
Why? Because the Prime Minister hasn't dealt with it.
The issue of entitlements wasn't just about Bronwyn Bishop, it was about Tony Burke and the Labor Party just as much. I mean, this issue, did not go away. Now, we've got a Canning by-election on September 19. We've got a fantastic candidate, an SAS captain in Andrew Hastie. Don Randall won 5 elections in Canning and had a huge personal support. Now, there's no doubt history shows you that sitting governments, incumbent governments, have swings against them in by-elections. And whether we get a small victory or a big victory, it's a victory. And that's what we're after in Canning.
All right, Ed?
Tony Abbott's problems basically fall to Tony Abbott. I mean, a lot of the problems too that I see come about with this government is because Tony Abbott relies on ambush to govern. He has to surprise people all the time. He surprises people by not putting things on the cabinet agenda and causing division within his cabinet. He surprises things within his party room by making a pathway to a decision, be it in terms of marriage equality last week, that people weren't expecting. He's not able or confident to argue reform on its merits. He has to get proxies to do it, be it Mike Baird, be it Dan Tehan. This is the problem with Tony Abbott. It comes back to that. It's not a case of bad luck or bad timing or whatever. A lot of this stuff comes back to the way and the quality in which decisions are made. And, as I said a few moments ago, with the case of former Speaker Bishop, he defended, he said he wouldn't move, and then he had to make a decision right at the end when he was worried about his own position. We're having the same approach being used in reference to Dyson Heydon. We'll have the same sort of approach being applied where he'll defend, and we'll see what happens as a result.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Ed Husic, Josh Frydenberg, a quick break, back in just a moment.
If you don't have the cash to live the life you deserve, you owe it to yourself to jump onto our website right now. I'm Andrew Barnett, and I want to share something so powerful it could change your life.
Since I've started trading with LTG Gold Rock, I'm reaping the rewards.
When you register for LTG Gold Rock's exclusive offer, you'll receive free and direct access to our live online trading room. You'll get to watch us trade live and see just how much money you could potentially make by following our trades. Go to dailytrade.com.au.
Our city isn't perfect. Our city is a blaze of neon flare. Does anybody care?
Now you can use your Telstra home broadband data away from home at thousands of hotspots across the country on Australia's largest Wi-Fi network. Telstra Air is how.
I can't believe they've done it.
Done what?
Well, they signed this free trade agreement with China.
You reckon there'll be some jobs in it?
Should be, but this deal, Tony Abbott stuffed it up.
How?
Well, he's letting Chinese companies bring in their own workers.
What, can't we do the work?
They don't even have to advertise the jobs.
That can't be right.
Sorry, but you won't even get a look in, son.
Tony Abbott made a choice. He just didn't choose you. Authorised by A. Hicks for the ETU, Rosebery.
For under $1,000, you can renovate your bathroom. You're going to add more value to your house. It's going to look better, you're going to feel better about it, and you're going to want to use the room more, definitely.
Estillo Toilet Suite, only $99. Timber laminate flooring, $31.32 per pack. Estillo Sink Mixer, $28.90. 3-metre extension lead, just $3.10. If you happen to find a lower price on a stocked item, we'll beat it by 10%.
They can do it themselves. Lowest prices are just the beginning.
Your loan's been approved. Congratulations. Thank you.
You can relax. It's all done.
You're all set. Okay, now that that's sorted, how about your super?
You're not getting your hands on my super.
No?
No, I'm with an industry super fund.
One of those?
Yes, one of those.
No sales incentives, run only to benefit members.
Ah, big night?
No, big day. Got to change the tiles, wrangle the magnolias, wrangle violet, finish your design, and poker night.
Big days start with Barocca.
This is AM Agenda. With me this morning, Josh Frydenberg and Ed Husic. Ed Husic, I want to ask you about something we mentioned before, but you said it was a distraction. The government seeking to prevent green groups from blocking...
Extreme green. You got to get their wording right. Extreme green groups.
Yes. Okay, well...
I'm just respectful of your term.
But if they're blocking multi-billion-dollar projects, that's not good.
Unnecessarily. So let's get this straight. We defend Dyson Hayden and say that he's a person...
Man of integrity.
Thank you very much for helping out. You always do from time to time.
When it's important.
But then the court makes a decision using laws that were introduced, I think, by the Howard government.
Correct.
And that's described as, quote, legal sabotage. You've described a court making a decision as legal sabotage. Not only is that, like, inconsistent, but you're actually challenging the way in which your own laws have been applied. And the bottom line is this is all a distraction. They've got nothing else to talk about in Parliament. They've got no legislation that they're really trying to pursue through this sitting. And so they have to confect something like this to get the attention of...
Okay, your defence of the government's
and
response?
It better be a good one too, Frydenberg.
Well, can I just say, Ed, the thing we're talking about here is 10,000 jobs at the Carmichael mine. Many workers who you would say you represent, namely through the unions, are being denied a chance at employment. 100 million people in India are being denied an opportunity to get electricity, and Australia is being denied a $20 billion investment. Now, this change to the EPBC Act is designed, in George Brandis's words, to remove the red carpet for radical activists from bringing cases that stop important economic development in this country.
But this process, as far as I'm aware, correct me if I'm wrong, but they haven't blocked it. It's temporarily held up, but it's not blocked, is it?
You see, they currently, these political activists who don't have a real legal interest in the outcome have the political standing under this section of the EPBC Act to bring a case.
And holding it up.
And what we're saying is, if you are a landowner or a neighbour to the land, that's fine. But if you are representing a conservation group that's more than 600 kilometres away from the mine itself, then that is not standing. And that's the issue at play here. Now, Labor has always struggled between its blue collar and its green thumb. You're in that no man's land in between. You can't be both things to both people. You have to choose. And right now, the question is, will you choose jobs? Will you support the union members get access to jobs in the coal mines and in related industries? You see, today, 88% of Australian workers choose not to join a union. Only 12% do in the private sector. They're your members, right? But they are dominating your policy. And I bet you, if you listen to them on this, you will actually...
Let's hear Ed's response now.
You do hand on heart so well, so you keep going. Did you say George Brandis is leading this reform push? What are we worried about? I mean, he's got such a stellar record on reform. Yeah, this is going to happen. I don't know why we're even talking about it. George Brandis is leading it. It's never going to happen.
It's about jobs, Ed.
Ah, yes, of course. You're very concerned about jobs, with jobless being as high as what it's been, decades. It's higher than what it was under the GFC. You want to cut penalty rates, but you tell us that you're concerned about workers and their conditions, and
we see 10,000 jobs
and you're worried about people in other countries while you slash the foreign aid budget to record levels. Yeah, no, you're very consistent.
The Australia Institute's released some research that says only 0.4% of projects considered under the Act have been affected by third-party challenges through the courts.
Well, this is
0.4%.
Well, I don't know how they can say that when you're looking at this Adani mine, which is 10,000 jobs.
They say it's 1,400 jobs.
Well,
they disagree with you on that as well.
Well, we're saying it's 10,000 jobs. It's a $20 billion investment. It's electricity for 100 million people overseas. You see, I don't know where the Labor Party stands.
It's not a distraction.
I don't know where the Labor Party stands in relation to coal. Right? Do they support the continued use of coal, which is the dominant source of electricity in this country and 40% of the world's electricity? And do they support the use of coal and the export of coal from Australia, which will help enable, there's more than 1.3 billion people in the world who don't have access to electricity? Will they continue to support the use of coal, or will you side with these green activists and deny Australians jobs?
Coal's prettier than those wind farms.
So do you think coal's the future?
I wouldn't like that question.
Do you agree coal's the future?
Josh, I mean, when you do this, this sort of mock seriousness, I mean, the general public do want to see us be able to generate energy in a much more longer-term sustainable way. It's why we put forward the proposition in terms of renewables and rely more on renewables. You guys you not only do not support that, you work to break down the ability of us to have a viable renewable energy sector while championing coal in the way that you do, and not being prepared to be serious about tackling climate change. And then you bring all this stuff up about where we stand on coal. Obviously, coal supports a lot of jobs, and obviously we are wanting to ensure that people's livelihoods aren't affected. But I tell you what, I think the general public would trust us in terms of managing that transition when it affects people's jobs than you guys, who just basically put in a token effort in terms of that type of economic and employment transition and only want to run for a political point-scoring exercise. So, yeah, you can do your ode to coal and feel free to do it on AM Agenda, but there's some serious issues about balancing transition, being concerned about climate change and ensuring we have viable energy generation in the future.
That's all reasonable, isn't it?
Well, we've got an agreed target with the Labor Party, 23.5% on renewable energy. Now, that was a difficult agreement to reach. It was a consensus-based agreement between your side and my side. That's a good thing. When it comes to our climate change target, our 26 to 28% and a reduction of 50% per capita by 2030 will be the best in the world and puts us on par with other countries around the region like New Zealand, Canada, so we're very proud of that.
Gentlemen,
where we differ with Labor is we don't support a carbon tax and higher electricity prices.
We've got to wrap it up. Thanks for the chat, as always.
Thanks very much.
Ed Husic, Josh Frydenberg. After the break.
End with a quote.
Have you got a quote?
Maybe today.
Yeah, today. You're going today, great. He always ends with a quote.
Politics is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, especially when your legs have been cut off and you're crawling to the finish line, so yeah.
I haven't finished a marathon, so I can't.
All right, thank you, gentlemen, with that nice bit of quote. Yeah,
three-pointer.
Lovely quoting at the end, beautifully. But just remember, you can't fatten the pig on market day. I'll leave it with you.